You know, I was a little bit nervous on a Sunday afternoon watching a little football because I said it's important. We got a new host. I wanted a good mood. Chicago's on the verge of losing this game, okay? We don't need Shae in a bad mood, okay? And then Chicago came to the rescue and handled their business. So that was taken care of. My man Cam wearing his Pittsburgh Steelers-like colors and that damn hat of his looking like Harry Potter, or black Harry Potter. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, okay? But it's good to see my brother, all right? But the biggest thing for me, Shae, Cam, when I saw a couple of quarterbacks playing football yesterday, I picked up the phone and I called my man RC and I called my man Dan Orlovsky, D.O., who's sitting right next to me. Because I said, what the hell? I know I'm not you, but I'm watching what I'm watching, okay? I had to make sure that Dan Orlovsky was going to be in studio today and be brave enough to show up. Because, boy, is it going to be a long morning for you.
I'm not worried about you.
First takes in the house. You better be worried.
Not worried about you.
I'll let you.
This is a game where you want to make sure that you're controlling the tempo of the game.
The Eagles 13 and the Lions 6.
5 times they've stopped them again.
Just couldn't ever really get in a rhythm offensively.
You'd like to think if we were able to get a fourth down or two, it changes the game.
And the Eagles are now 8-2.
Our team's waiting to win because they know how to win.
Shae Cornette, Stephen A. Smith here with you, Dan Orlovsky, and yes, Cam Newton is joining us from the ATL. Good morning, everyone.
Good
How are you
morning.
feeling?
Good morning. Hope y'all had a
Feel
wonderful weekend. Hope y'all had a wonderful weekend.
Feel great.
I did.
What made
So
it
did I.
wonderful for you?
So did I.
I was in a warm weather place, you know what I'm saying? I wasn't in New York at the time.
Yeah.
It was
was
warm.
cold here this
I was
weekend.
warm. It wasn't cold,
Cold
where I
and
was.
windy.
Wasn't cold where I was. I was good.
It is even colder this morning, it feels
you
like. Let's go to last night, because the offense was cold for both teams, okay? Eagles and Lions, not much offense really from either team. The Eagles have now combined for 26 points in their last 2 games, which were both wins, by the way. The Lions were 3 of 13 on third down. They failed to convert on 5 fourth down attempts. But much was made of the final call of the game, which was a defensive pass interference call for the Lions. And so let's dive into that play quickly here. Did that call rob Detroit of the win? Cam Newton, you first. What do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, as you see this type of game unfold, you know that it's going to come down to an epic finish. Well, we were robbed for that because what happened to physicality in letting them play, ref? Well, we didn't see that. The ref made it about himself and said, hey, was it touchy? Yes, but was it that type of game? Absolutely. This was a defensive-esque game. We knew it was going to be chippy. We knew it was going to come down to, some type of heroics at the end. And from the fans' perspective, we were robbed from that. A pass interference to give a potential opportunity to make all his wrongs right in Jared Goff. No, he doesn't get that. And it's disappointing to see that happen. And I must say, should that have been under review? I would have loved to see somebody kind of overthrow and say, like, no, that wasn't a necessary, pass interference, and we cannot end the game on these type of circumstances. But it happened.
Why can't you review penalties? It never makes any sense.
Well, I'm not going to say they were robbed because it implies that they would have won the game had this call not taken place. And the way their offense looked, the way they were pressuring Jared Goff, the way Jared Goff was looking throughout the night, completing 38% of his passes, the worst night of his career, arguably. I mean, I'm not going to go that far, but it was an absolutely awful call. And you don't want to see that. Particularly in a game of this magnitude, you really don't want to see it, period. I understand. Listen, a lot of times in a lot of sports, we go by letter of the law, and I understand it has to. I get it. Doesn't mean we had to like it. But I guess what I'm saying is if there's any wiggle room whatsoever not to do that and to make sure it's decided on the field, you do that. This was so flagrantly obvious that, you look at them, if anything, AJ could have been called for offensive interference. He could have been called for that. To make this call, it's just egregious. It's 1:51 left. If you don't get that call, you got to turn the ball over to Detroit. And that defense that's been playing lights out, now you got Gibbs and Jamison Williams and the crew on the opposite side of the field. What you going to do against them? You got this one last stand that you have to make. That's how the game should have ended. We got robbed of that opportunity because this was an absolutely awful, awful call on the part of the officiating.
Yeah, saying the Lions got robbed because of the call is ridiculous.
Right.
The Lions got whooped last night, okay? Their offensive line got exposed last night. Jared Goff was poor under pressure. So, yes, it's a bad call. We didn't get a potential finish, but did anybody feel like they were going to go do anything? This offensive line got whooped by this defense in Philadelphia. So to sit here and say they got robbed because of that call, no shot. They got manhandled at the line of scrimmage.
They got denied the opportunity to have one last shot at winning the game. That much we can say. I don't think we can say any more than that. You're right. But we can at least say that.
Yeah.
Sure.
I was promising, I thought, to see the Lions defense actually show up. But I don't mean that in a mean way. I mean it like they were the reason that they were in this game for so long.
Scoring team held to 9 points.
Let's go to the Eagles side of this, though, because Jalen Hurts accounted for only one touchdown. That was the tush push that we saw. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith combined for only 57 yards, only 8 catches combined. Same story offensively, different day, it feels like, for the team that's leading the NFC. Let's hear from the players in the locker room after the game.
Self-inflicted. I think as soon as we got going, we shot ourselves in the foot. That's something that we can clean up. If somebody just beat us, then hats off to them. But it's some things that we are doing.
My main takeaways is we got to score points. We got to be more efficient. We got to take advantage of opportunities when they're there, and we got to control the things that we can control. It's the same MO it's been this whole entire time.
Well, I don't know what I was expecting from Philadelphia, but I thought maybe we'd see a little bit more offensive production since they were coming off their last game in prime time where things didn't look good on that side of the ball. A win is a win, I guess, but were you more impressed, Stephen A., with Philly's defense or disappointed in Philadelphia's offense?
Well, I was more impressed with their defense. I thought their defense was lights out. Again, reiterating the point that I made a second ago, you got the second-ranked offense in the National Football League coming into the game, averaging 31 points a game. You didn't just beat them, you beat them down, okay? You pressured them all night long. You got sacks, okay? I'm looking at holding them to a season-low 9 points, only 13 first downs, going 3 for 13 on third downs. This is what we're talking about with the Detroit Lions last night. 0 for 5 with those fourth down calls.
Yeah.
I mean, completely shut down, beat up at the line of scrimmage. Dan Campbell takes over offensive play calling duties, registers a season high 44 points, 546 yards the week before. What did I say? Well, that was against the Commanders. Let's pump the brakes and let's see what's going to happen this week. And sure enough, they strolled into Philadelphia, and they were absolutely awful. There is no way to slice it. And you have critics. I'm a fan of Dan Campbell's because he's a culture changer, but you got a lot of people that have looked at some of these decisions. You know how he's not risk averse. He will take chances. He will push the envelope. He will do those things. Last night was a time when it did not work to their advantage. And to me, Philadelphia showed me they can beat you up. And I don't think that's the kind of message that you want exposed about yourself if you're the Detroit Lions as the season wanes. Get physical with them, beat them up at the line of scrimmage, and guess what? You can sit up there and reduce them to the rubble they looked like last night. That's what they looked like. We have not, and Jared Goff has had bad moments. He's had bad moments in the postseason. He's had bad moments in regular seasons in his career. We haven't seen him look this bad. He was bad last night, and it was because the Eagles were applying an awful lot of pressure, very, very little protection.
Yeah, I'm praising Howie Roseman, the general manager for the Eagles.
Sure.
This Jalen Phillips edition
big time
feels like it's going to be the Von Miller addition to the Rams from years ago, the OBJ. This defense right now is the best defense in football along with the Rams and Seattle Seahawks. There's no way that anybody could tell me one is better than the other. This is a defense that was a little bit of a question mark to start the season. They weren't getting back to the quarterback. Phillips has been fantastic, both in the run and the pass. You're starting to see Jalen Carter start to play like Jalen Carter did last year. Ojomo's been great. Nakobe Dean being healthy. So I'm praising this defense. Their coverage unit is absolutely sensational. I think that where I kind of like fall off of this past weekend because the games were so great is there's 3 teams that I would sit there and say there are the class of the NFC. It's Philly, it's Seattle, and it's LA. When it comes to what offense am I most concerned with out of those 3, it's Philly. And Detroit was great. But Detroit was down, I think, 3 out of their 4 secondary starters, 4 out of 5 at some point.
Yeah.
And they locked Philly up in the pass game. There was no separation in the pass game. And so while I can sit here and say really good run defense in Detroit and hats off, they were great. Detroit was just playing man-to-man coverage. My guy better than your guy. And for a team that has 2 elite ones, and Devontae's become a top 5 wide receiver this year, for them to lock them up as much as they did in their pass game, yeah, that gives me a little bit of like, this is going to have to get a little bit better offensively in Philly.
Go ahead, Cam.
Yeah, well, I'll say it this way. Howie Roseman, what he's been able to do over these 3 to 5 years is to put a masterclass of how to sustain success. And you can marvel and say, hey, Jalen Phillips' addition is extremely paramount for this team moving forward. But I would say, hey, what about grabbing some veteran leadership in Brandon Graham? You know, when you have young guys like Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, you know, to be very stout in the middle of the defense, those guys need that OG, so to speak, to really nurture and say, hey, let's find ways to assist this team to necessarily win. Now, when you look at last night's game, there was obvious discomfort from Jared Goff. And when you start to ask yourself this type of question, Dan Orlovsky, those type of games that we saw last night was a superstar-esque type of game. 2 superstars, I would say, showed up for the Detroit Lions in Jahmyr Gibbs and Jamison Williams.
Yes.
But where is Amon-Ra St. Brown? Where is Jared Goff? These are all our superstars. We know we're lacking at the tight end position right now. That means somebody has to elevate their level of play. I was so disappointed to see we only had Amon-Ra just make a peak early on in the game, and then all of a sudden he vanishes. That's not what we were necessarily used to. Yes, you know, their 3rd down conversion was an atrocity. When you look at the 4th down conversion rate, that was something that probably would never happen under Dan Campbell's leadership ever again. But where were the superstars? And when you ask yourself that type of question, moving forward, is that a real red flag? Or is this just a bad game to have had?
It's a little bit of Cooper DeJean. I mean, Cooper DeJean is as good as any nickel in the NFL. And so that's a matchup that Philadelphia constantly has the advantage in. With the red flag stuff, Cam, I would say this. The far greater red flag for me for Detroit would be the offensive line play. This is a team that if they're going to get to the NFC title game, if they're going to get to the Super Bowl, you're going to have to go through a Philly D-line or a Seattle D-line or a Rams D-line. You can't right now. Your offensive line is not good enough right now. So, and I agree with you. They should have gotten the ball more to Gibbs. They didn't get the ball to Gibbs enough out in space. But I think the walk away would be like Detroit's offensive line be concerning.
Well, just keep this in mind. 20 quarterback pressures, 7 hits, 2 sacks. You got to take that into consideration. There's a reason that Jared Goff, who came in the game, complete 74% of his passes. Completed 38% of his passes.
He was 0 for 12 last night under pressure.
0 for 12 under pressure. They were all over him, okay? And so, again, you got to take that into consideration as well, because you got to ask yourself the question, okay, so that's what we need to do, apply pressure to this brother and he gets rattled. You got to ask those questions. You got to ask those questions when you're looking at the Detroit Lions, because this is what it's going to be about. In the case of the Philadelphia Eagles, we'd be remiss in neglecting to point out how anemic their offense has been. I mean, this is the 2nd week in a row. I mean, how many points are you scoring? What are you really doing? You're averaging under 300 yards of total offense over the last 2 games or so. You're not really doing anything. Saquon Barkley only averaged 3.2 yards a carry.
2 good defenses, though.
I understand that, Brandon. You running the ball 74 plays over the last 2 games, passing it 54% over the last 2 games. This is after the bye week. This is after you've heard A.J. Brown complaining and you're still throwing the ball less as opposed to throwing the ball more. So you are looking at the Philadelphia Eagles and you're wondering what on earth is going on, because you know they can throw the football. You know they have receivers to catch the football. Why are you running the ball significantly more? It made sense last year when Saquon Barkley was playing lights out. When that's not the case this year, you're still continuing to do something that is not rendered to, or is not considered to be that effective. Why are you continuing to do it with such a discrepancy? I think that's something we got to keep our eyes on.
It's the first time the Eagles have held back-to-back opponents to under 10 points. I know this about Vic Fangio. I covered him when he was the Bears defensive coordinator. His defenses get better as the year goes on, every single year, and you're seeing that come to fruition now with the Philadelphia Eagles. Cam, really quick, you want to get in here? Go ahead.
Yeah. Absolutely. I would like to challenge something real quick. I don't necessarily think of the biggest red flag to be the Detroit Lions offensive line here. When we've had 2 things. There was evident that Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown's connection yesterday was extremely weird and eye-opening. We haven't seen this all season. There were two times where it's apparent, hey, I thought you was going to sit down. You didn't. Hey, I thought you was going to take a high. You didn't. So that's one. And then the inability to extend drives was something that really came down to the difference maker in this game. Okay, you have 3rd and short. Okay, we're going for it. We got 4th and short. We do not get that. That's not the offensive line. Yes, execution-wise it is. But were they able to move the football? Were they able to run the football? Yes, consistently. When Jahmyr Gibbs has the type of game that he has, you don't just look at an individual and say, hey, he was on one. You look at the totality of the offensive line and everybody, having a hand in doing that. They just were not able to extend drives to now get the offense wholly in a rhythm that they'll necessarily need moving forward to make a playoff run.
Dan Campbell said after the game it was just an off night, he felt like, for his entire team. Obviously not an opportune time to have an off night when you're in prime time on Sunday Night Football against Eagles, but nonetheless.